Welcome back to the Kelly Lawson podcast, where we peel back the layers of society, power, and philosophy. I'm your host, Kelly Lawson. Today, we're venturing into a timeless question. Who gets to judge? And just as important, when should we stop judging? Judgment is a force that shapes everything, from courtrooms and pulpits to comment sections and dinner tables. It's embedded in the justice system, religion, politics, and even casual conversations. But what happens when judgment is misplaced? When it's too harsh, too fast, or too biased? We're going to explore how different societies, thinkers, and traditions have handled the idea of judgment. Who is allowed to judge, why they do it, and when restraint is the wisest move. From ancient Egypt to Instagram, from tribal law to artificial intelligence, judgment has changed, but its impact remains profound. Let's dive deep. Segment 1. Judgment in an ancient world. In ancient civilizations, judgment was never just a practical tool. It was a spiritual mechanism for maintaining cosmic order. In Egypt, justice wasn't just about fairness, it was metaphysical necessity. If Ma'at, the goddess of truth, balance, and order, was not upheld, the cosmos itself would collapse into chaos. The weighing of the heart was ritualized performance of this belief, illustrating that every moral act bore eternal consequences. Thus, judgment became a matter of cosmic participation. Mesopotamia's Hammurabi, inscribing his laws in stone, claimed divine authority from Shamash, the god of justice. This asserted not just the king's right to judge, but his sacred duty to mediate between gods and people. Law was no longer reactive. It was prescriptive, a mirror of cosmic balance projected into human behavior. In Greece, judgment took on a self-reflective lens. Socrates, through the dialect, taught that wisdom starts by questioning one's own assumptions. His trial and death underscored a tragic irony. A society that judged prematurely silenced its conscience. Plato's Republic urged a more ordered approach. Those trained in the nature of truth, the philosopher kings, should judge, not the masses. Versus like an Instagram or one of those. Aristotle later grounded judgment in phronesis, practical wisdom, saying, a good judge must have moral character and contextual understanding. That portion of the story is rather important. Roman jurisprudence became increasingly secular but retained moral underpinnings. Justice was personified as a goddess holding scales and a sword. Still present in our courtrooms today, the symbology of that one, Roman law laid the framework for modern contracts, citizenship, rights, but beneath the scaffolding was a philosophy that judgment must be fair, impartial, and codified. In the East, systems like the Manusmriti, Taoist harmony, and Confucianism, rectification of names, show how embedded judgment was in cultural hierarchy and moral education. In all cases, judgment was more than authority. It was a means of preserving the social and cosmic equilibrium. We can also see echoes of ancient judgment in indigenous traditions. For example, among the Maori of New Zealand, the concept of utu embodies both justice and balance. Restoring harmony in the community is more important than punishing the wrongdoer. This mirrors the Egyptian notion of ma'at, and highlights the universality of equilibrium as a moral aim. When one is right, how do we right the wrong? The wrong, trying to find the equilibrium. Even in ancient Persia, Zoroastrian theology envisioned a final judgment day where deeds were weighed and the soul's fate decided. Not unlike the Egyptian belief, the shared archetypes of cosmic justice across civilizations show us that early human societies were deeply preoccupied with aligning judgment with the divine and the eternal. Segment 2. Religious and moral boundaries. Religious traditions frame judgment not merely as a human act, but as a moral echo of divine will. This has profound implications on how societies view power, humility, and accountability. Christianity offers layered nuance. While the Gospels emphasize restraint, judge not, they also call out injustice, hypocrisy, exploitation. Jesus' example teaches that righteous judgment involves self-scrutiny, empathy, and a willingness to elevate the marginalized. The divine prerogative to judge is not to be mimicked in haste. Rather, we're invited to forgive, understand, and reform. Judaism's ethical tradition builds a robust model for human judgment, layered with commentary, checks, and context. The Talmud doesn't just say judge favorably, it prescribes procedures and in rabbinic debate and interpretive humility. The very structure of Jewish law is dialogical. It presumes no one person sees the whole truth. Islamic teachings extend this even further. The Quran insists on adal, justice grounded in truth and mercy. Judgment in Islamic law requires intention, evidence, and fairness. One's internal state matters just as much as their external behavior. The Prophet's sayings warn against backbiting, slander, and suspicion, as these erode the moral fabric of our societies. In Eastern thought, judgment is often reframed. In Buddhism, labeling others is a form of attachment. Clinging to perceptions of ego, the Noble Eightfold Path encourages seeing causes and conditions behind actions. Rather than blame, it promotes compassion rooted in clarity. In Hinduism, divine justice is built into the machinery of the cosmos through karma. Dharma, one's sacred duty, is individualized, judging someone's actions without understanding. Their dharma is not only wrong, it's spiritually misinformed. Sikhism, Taoism, and indigenous worldviews introduce yet another dimension. Balance, judgment isn't about moral hierarchy, it's about relational harmony. To judge someone without context, lineage, or community impact is to misunderstand the very nature of justice. The challenge these traditions pose to modern secular societies is profound. Without a shared theological or moral base, who defines judgment today? In the West, that power often defaults to popular opinion, legal precedent, and media narrative. Religious traditions challenge us to slow down, to question, not just the action, but our authority and fitness to judge at all. Perhaps the deepest takeaway from spiritual models of judgment is this. The wisest judgment is often silent. It's lived through compassion, not declared from a pedestal. Segment 3. Who gets to judge in society? Societal judgment evolves with institutions, but often lags in ethics. Who gets to judge reveals who holds power and who doesn't. Democracy, as practiced in Athens, was revolutionary, but not perfect. Socrates was executed for undermining traditional values. The system allowed citizens to judge, but didn't guarantee wisdom or fairness. The danger, when collective judgment is swayed by fear or rhetoric, justice is compromised. Medieval Europe, in contrast, centralized judgment in kings and clergy. Justice became spectacle. public executions, excommunications, and inquisitions reflected not just crime, but conformity. To be judged was often to be silenced. The Enlightenment proposed a new model, judgment through reason. Thinkers like Rousseau and Montesquieu envisioned systems of checks and balances, civic virtue, and public accountability. But even then, judgment remained gendered, racialized, and class-bound. In today's systems, judicial robes attempt to symbolize impartiality, but the numbers speak. Marginalized groups face longer sentences, harsher bail, and more frequent stops. The judge may be neutral, but the pipeline feeding the courtroom is anything but. Social media shifted judgment from the bench to the feed, the news feed. Platforms reward speed over accuracy, outrage over understanding. Cancel culture reveals our hunger for justice, but also our impatience for process. The problem isn't accountability, it's algorithmic judgment without empathy. Enter AI. Algorithms now judge who gets a loan, who gets paroled, who gets hired. These systems are not neutral. They replicate human bias at scale, and their decisions are often opaque and can many times be flawed. Looking globally, societies handle judgment very differently. In Japan, harmony and reputation often override direct confrontation. In Rwanda, post-genocide, Gacaca courts relied on community reconciliation, not elite juries. In indigenous Canada, sentencing circles brings elders and community into judgment decisions. Each system reflects a worldview. Is judgment about control, harmony, restoration, or status? Understanding who gets to judge means uncovering a society's deepest values and its hidden exclusions. Segment 4, Drawing the Line. Segment 4, Drawing the Line. When not to judge. Judgment is a moral tool, but not every situation calls for it. The hardest thing for a society or a person to do is pause. Ask questions and withhold condemnation. Psychology tells us that humans are wired for snap judgments. It's a survival mechanism, but what served us on the savannah often sabotages us in our community. Confirmation bias, fundamental attribution error, and projection all distort how we assess others. Philosophers from Kierkegaard to Simon Weil have argued that true love requires attention, a full presence with another person without reducing them to categories or failure. That's the beginning of mercy. Restorative justice shows us a different path. It says that healing, not vengeance, is the end goal. When people are invited to share stories, name pain, and hear others, judgment transforms from a verdict into a mirror. In spiritual contexts, the choice not to judge can be sacramental. Forgiveness is not naivety. It's a disciplined refusal to define someone by their worst moment. Compassionate justice demands we ask, what structural condition created this action? What trauma lives beneath this behavior? This doesn't erase responsibility. It contextualizes it. This doesn't mean judgment disappears. It becomes slower, wiser, and more redemptive. It shifts from power to possibility. We can learn from literature and history too. In Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov isn't judged solely by the law, but by conscience, by love, and by redemption. In South Africa township courts, where formal legal access is scarce, Communities often resolve disputes through storytelling and testimony, not decrees. Sometimes the most courageous thing is not to judge, but to witness, wait, and work for a better answer. The value today of hearing a few different perspectives about judgment is how it's just like I mentioned in our last episode, how you can, depending on what eyes you look through, you can see tyranny everywhere. You can see hypocrisy everywhere. You can see your own every flaws and all in how we commit these actions as individuals. Judgment is another one that I sit back and I listen to conversation flows. Something that I've noticed is extremely common is that people only really bond through complaining about something else. There's a reason why that's a sin and one of the devils and a demon sitting on your shoulder when you're vocalizing that. Besides the fact it's negativity, there's so many other issues, and depending on the topic that I can just start stacking up demons right there. That's why that's bad. You shouldn't be judging. This person said that, I'm going here, and dialoguing, it's negative. Judgment. Dismiss it and focus on bettering you. Talking about somebody else in a judging sense, a complaining sense. Judgment is as old as humanity. And so is the struggle to do it well. Whether through schools, scripture, law, or code, we keep trying to get it right. But maybe right isn't the goal. Maybe just is. Maybe wise is. We all judge, but let's do it thoughtfully. Let's remember our limits and let's hold a space for complexity. This is Kelly Lawson. Thank you for listening. Until next time, judge less, understand more, and ask better questions. You have a good week.